Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Balanced Approach podcast. I'm your host, Louis Padian, and I hope that you are well. Hope you're enjoying these episodes so far. I'm definitely enjoying producing them and putting them up and getting some lovely feedback, so thank you very much for that. Today we will be discussing all things motivation, which is a massive topic for people, but things we'll be covering will be what motivation actually is. Does it work when we're getting started with new habits, behaviours, or wanting to make lifestyle changes? And what else we can focus on to help us move forward? As someone who's been on my own sort of health and weight loss journey over the year, with improving my wellbeing, losing weight, and then also helping many others as a professional for the last couple of years, it's really a common feature in conversation with people about feeling motivated and people feeling that motivation is the one thing, the silver bullet to overcoming all their obstacles and achieving their goals. Things like, I want to eat well, but I just can't stay motivated, or I'm just not motivated to eat X, Y, Z. I wish I was motivated to go to the gym, and actually we can delve into that a bit more throughout this episode. So first of all, we need to cover what actually motivation is. And the definition around this is your general willingness to do something. It's a set of psychological forces that almost force you to take action or drive you to take action. But if we want to have a look at putting that into the real context, there's a really interesting quote from a book called The War of Art by Steven Pressfield, which he describes it as, at some point, the pain of not doing it becomes greater than the pain of doing it. And that forces to change, and that's basically what motivation is. Now we need to cover, does it actually work? It's this common thing that often gets thrown around by people, but is it all it's cracked up to be? And from my experience, it doesn't. And there's three reasons why it doesn't really work. First of all, it's unreliable. It's fleeting, it comes and goes. We're not always going to be motivated to do things. Things pop up that have more of a priority in our life, and that can also, if we're not motivated, mean that sort of drifts away. Secondly, motivation is often based by people on external factors, mainly around sort of rewards and punishments, where we might call them like intrinsic or extrinsic goals, and that's not necessarily sustainable in the long term as well, where things change, life changes, and those rewards or punishments come and go as well, which means our motivation drifts off. Lastly, one of the things that I often communicate to my clients and patients is that motivation comes from taking action. So actually we're waiting to feel motivated to take the action, when actually we need to take the action to feel motivated. And actually starting to do something will mean that we'll get motivated. And often the people that we feel or we see are they're really motivated for the gym example. If they're eating really well, we'll go, oh, it's easy for them because they're really motivated. Actually they've just taken action and it's become a habit. It's become ingrained into their lifestyle that actually they're probably not motivated all the time, but we'll discuss what they actually do instead. So discuss whether motivation actually works, and it can, but it's probably not a good source or the main thing to rely on. What else can we focus on? So if motivation doesn't work, one thing that we can focus on is discipline. And this is going to sound really authoritarian, and actually it's not. Discipline is just our ability to do something without, even when we don't feel like it. It allows us to stay on sort of track with our motivation when our motivation is lacking. So having that discipline mentality, obviously using action to get us started, feeling motivated, fantastic, but building that habit and being disciplined with that habit or routine, whatever we're trying to achieve, that will take us a lot further. And it also doesn't rely on us feeling motivated. It doesn't really account for our feelings because we just do it even when we don't feel like it. So how can we develop discipline? Well, there's three things that I'd suggest to help develop this discipline. First of all, setting clear goals and making out a plan to achieve them. And we'll do a totally different episode on goal setting, how to set them effectively. But instead of just going to the gym or eating healthily, what we can do is break it down. We're going, well, I'm going to eat 3 portions of my fruit and veg each day with each of my main meals. Or someone going that I'm going to go to the gym 3 times a week after work with a friend for half an hour. Being a lot more specific with those goals and setting those intentionally. And when we talk about goals, often people just set outcome goals where I'm going to do this or I'm going to achieve this outcome. When actually, if we look at the processes of how we're going to achieve it, that can actually make it more successful in the long term. Secondly, as I've just done there, is that we need to break it down into smaller more manageable steps. Often people try to eat the elephant all in one go, and actually we need to break it down to smaller bits. My main advice with this would be to meet yourself where you're at. People try to do too much too soon. I see someone going, right, it's January, and this is often something that we see around January, New Year, is people going from not doing anything for November, December, or even the last couple of months or years, and going, right, I'm going to join a gym, I'm going to go 5-6 times a week. That going from 0 to 60 often doesn't lead to sustainable, manageable progress long term. It might last for a week or two or even a month, but people quickly drop off. So one of the things that is a really important takeaway from this is people tend to drastically overestimate what they can achieve in the short term, and then drastically underestimate what they can achieve in the long term. So if you think about, right, January hits or next Monday start, I'm going to eat 5 portions of fruit and veg a day, and currently you're not eating any. Yes, that might last a week or two, but if you've not really put a huge amount of planning into it and you're just forcing it in wherever you can, you might not achieve it, or you might not enjoy it, or it might not be very feasible long term to stick to. Actually, what someone might be best off doing is meeting themselves where they're at and going, right, if I start with just 1 portion of fruit and veg this week and aim to really nail that down this month, then next month I'm going to add 1 more in. And then if you think about by month 6, they're at 6 portions of fruit and veg per day, which is fantastic. Where if they just jumped in at 5, yes, they might manage 5 for the first week or 2, but that'll quickly drop off, or I often see people dropping off with that, and it doesn't last very long. So taking that smaller, more measured approach can have a huge beneficial impact on people's success with setting these goals. So like I said, if you're starting off with 0 fruit and veg, 3 or even 5, or even 3 I should say, might be a lot to think about. Especially we tend to find getting from 0 to 1 is a massive step, or the biggest step, compared to getting from 1 to 2. So seeing how you're going to get 1 in and actually planning that in and thinking about ways to include that within their day. This is often a misconception with people, that I tend to find that when they sit down with me, they think I'm just going to bark at them, that they need to have 5 portions of fruit and veg every day, they need to be drinking lots more water, they need to be exercising for 30 minutes each day. Well, actually, if they're not anywhere near that, we've got to meet them where they're at and go, right, so actually a small increase across any of those areas is going to have a huge benefit to how you're feeling, your overall health, well-being, and the quality of life that you're going to have. So let's start with 1. Let's start with a 5-minute walk a couple of days a week, if you can manage it. If you're managing that, fantastic. Then we can slowly increase from there. So making sure that you're meeting yourself where you're at, instead of grabbing that number out of the air and going, right, this is what I need to do starting from tomorrow. Third of all, we need to reward ourselves with our progress, or when we achieve these things. So if, for example, you're hitting your fruit and veg, that's amazing. Then, right, let's plan something in the weekend, because that's a nice little reward. It's going to make you want to do things more. Same with the gym. If you're hitting your sessions, a common one that I find with myself as well, or when I've spoken to people, is if there's something at the gym that they've signed up to a membership, for example, because they want to use certain facilities such as a sauna or a swimming pool, brilliant. If they want to start using the gym but they don't feel motivated, right, let's go to the gym, have a really low barrier for entry, instead of saying I'm going to go to the gym for an hour, 5 days a week. Let's start with 10-15 minutes. Get familiar, get comfortable, and 3 times a week. And then every time we go and do 10-15 minutes, we can do more if we want, but if we don't want to, we've ticked that off, we've done our 10 or 15 minutes, and we can go in the pool or sauna as a nice little reward. So again, having those 3 things where you're setting goals, you're breaking them down into smaller, more manageable steps, and then having rewards around it can really increase the chances of building that discipline into your daily routines and habits. But also, motivation is a factor to consider, and we can increase the likelihood of feeling motivated more often. So it isn't the silver bullet that we were probably hoping for, and there'll be times when we don't have any at all, but here's things that we can do to increase our motivation. First of all is have a really strong why, so identifying why you're wanting to do this behaviour. Having a strong why will mean that you're more likely to want to do the thing and will help with that motivation. Secondly, visualising yourself doing the things. If you see it, you can achieve it. So again, giving yourself that opportunity mentally to zone into it can be a really, really helpful thing with feeling motivated. If you see yourself going, right, the night before, I'm meant to go to the gym in the morning before work, I'm probably not going to feel motivated, right? Spending 5 minutes going, right, what does tomorrow's session look like? What sort of exercise am I going to do? And then also visualising that reward as well can be another little bonus to help with that motivation, because if you go, right, if I go to the gym in the morning and get 15 minutes in on the cross trainer or doing some weights, I'll have enough time in the morning to do 15 minutes in the swimming pool or get in the sauna as well. And that can help you feel motivated to go in the morning, to get up early and build that routine in. Next on the list, I'd probably look at surrounding yourself with people who support your goals, or people who have a shared goal or values around what you're trying to do. One of the things that you might have heard is find your vibe, find your tribe, and definitely helps when you've got for example, if we're looking to go to the gym, a workout buddy who's on a similar journey to you that wants to go and build this habit in as well, or joining a community where that's already almost like a social norm, we call it, or where it's normal. So this is why communities like CrossFit, for example, are really successful. People start and they've not really exercised at all, but they're with these other people who have already built this habit of going to this certain class at this certain time, doing these exercises. It's a really positive environment for them. Yes, CrossFit has its downfalls or its drawbacks, but this is a real huge positive aspect of it. And same with running clubs and things like that I've experienced in the past, or team sports, for example. Having people with similar goals, similar motivations, similar struggles as well, because sharing those struggles, or people who have managed to find ways around it, can be a really useful tool for you overcoming those barriers. So that can be a really useful tool as well. Last of all, this is a really important message, and it could have its own podcast completely, and it's taking action even when you're not motivated. There's a really useful phrase, and it's imperfect action beats perfect inaction. So taking action even though it might not be the perfect one. So like I said, in our minds you might think, right, I'm going to eat 5 fruits and veg this week, and I'm going to go to the gym, and you might get to the end of Monday, you've not had any portions of your fruit and veg, or you might have not gone to the gym yet and you can't be bothered, and you might think, well, I haven't got time to get my hour session in. Just getting in 1 or 2 portions on that Monday, yes, it's not perfect, but it's better than nothing. Or getting to the gym and just doing a 10-15 minute session, or even just going for a short walk, is better than nothing. And that's where that imperfect action mentality can be really beneficial. With clients and patients in the past, I've used things like a 2-minute rule, or even just breaking down their process, things that might be barriers. So things like, right, if I'm going to go for a walk today, and they say we go for a 10-minute walk 5 times a week or every day, for example, there's a process to going for that walk. It's putting your shoes on, it's getting ready, making sure that it's appropriate, making sure that that if the weather's bad, that you've got appropriate stuff to wear. So even one patient, for example, getting for a walk was one of their goals, but they really weren't motivated or in the routine of doing it. And we just simply said, right, so we're going to put your shoes on and see how you feel. If you put your shoes on, you don't feel it today, that's completely fine, we've tried. And then once we've got in the habit of putting the shoes on, usually someone goes, well, you know what, I'm going to put my coat on, because that's another step on the ladder to getting out the door. And you know what, this week we're going to put our shoes on, put our coat on. If we still don't fancy it, we can, you know what, we've tried today. And building those steps into that process can be really useful to getting to that end goal. And same with the 2-minute rule. If someone goes, well, I don't know if I'm going to have enough time for a half hour, or I'm not really feeling it today, 2 minutes. Just do 2 minutes at the gym, and if you've done your 2 minutes, you go, still not feeling it, fantastic. But we tend to find that the hardest part is getting going, getting from that 0 to 1, building that momentum from nothing to moving forward slightly. If we can get there, everything else becomes a lot easier and a lot smoother. And we tend to find that the 2-minute rule tends to get people into a 20-minute, half-hour session, because they've given themselves permission to go, right, if it gets to 2 minutes and I don't fancy it, I can go home. But after 2 minutes, I go, I could probably do a bit more, or I'm really enjoying this, or I'm feeling a bit better now. So again, using the 2-minute rule, or just even a lower barrier for entry. So going for a walk and going, right, I'm going to go to walk to the end of the road, rather than for a massive 10-15 minute walk. Right, see how I feel at the end of the road. If I don't, I just turn back and go, and I've tried today. So that can be a really useful tool too. So that is all things motivation. I'm sure we'll be doing this episode again in future with a few more bits to add in to make it more useful, because motivation is a useful tool, but it's very unreliable. So we need to sort of tune into that discipline element. And again, not that authoritarian approach to discipline. Discipline that's going to suit you, benefit you, and that aligns with your values and goals. Focus on that discipline, and if there's a side of motivation, then that's great, but hopefully we can build that discipline and understand that imperfect action of taking action even when we don't feel motivated, or we don't have all the things in line that we need to, or we feel that we need to, can take us a lot further than just waiting around for that motivation to appear. Things like setting clear goals, making a plan, breaking down your goals into smaller steps, rewarding yourself in the process, but ensuring those rewards align with what you're trying to achieve in the long term. There's no point rewarding yourself with a massive pizza each day, a couple of thousand calories for a 5-minute walk if your goal's weight loss, because it's counterproductive. So ensuring that goal and that reward are aligned in what you're trying to achieve. So that's everything around motivation. Thank you very much for listening to today's episode of the Balanced Approach podcast. As always, if you have any questions, queries, or would like to reach out to me, I am at Louis Padian Nutrition, which is at LOUISPADIAN Nutrition on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and all social media platforms. And I look forward to catching up with you on the next episode.